I would like to welcome Integrity Commissioner Suzanne Craig to present her formal investigative report and global findings in response to complaints she received regarding Trustee Donna Blackburn, Trustee Donna Dixon, and Trustee Nili Kaplan-Myrth in accordance with Board Member Code of Conduct Policy P.073.gov.
That's what it sounded like this past December 19th when trustees with the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board voted nearly unanimously to censure one of their own, Dr. Nili Kaplan-Myrth, for violating the board's code of conduct. The high-profile Ottawa doctor is now banned from taking part in the school board's regular monthly meeting tonight. She was also kicked off 5 school board committees until the end of March. I mean, she can attend and listen in as a civilian, but she can't speak or vote. Kaplan-Myrth maintains she hasn't done anything criminal, just call out anti-Semitism and silence from her colleagues at the school board over her personal situation. As we've reported before here at the CJN, she's been getting tons of hateful emails, vicious attacks on social media, and also some physical threats, so much so that the board drew up a special safety plan for her, although since October 7th, Kaplan-Myrth feels it's much too risky to come in. The Integrity Commissioner's report acknowledged Kaplan-Myrth's scary situation and said staff need better equity training on what it's like to be a Jewish person. But it was critical of how dysfunctional the school board has become. At issue are some of her comments she made to other trustees when they were all debating her call to bring back masks in schools. At that November meeting, the doctor texted a trustee, Donna Dixon, who is Black, that Dixon should have voted to bring in the mask mandate, otherwise she was, quote, siding with white supremacists. When another trustee, Donna Blackburn, shot back that Kaplan-Myrth had no business attacking a Black person, Kaplan-Myrth took this as an anti-Semitic attack on her because it says all white people have privilege and can't possibly be victims of oppression too. Despite the ban, Dr. Kaplan-Myrth is fighting back. She thinks the code of conduct issue is being weaponized against her because she's been shining a spotlight on the equity problems inside the Ottawa School Board.
This is me just literally doing my job for a year and being relentlessly attacked. And then when I turn to my colleagues to stand up as allies for me, the same as I did for them, I get back worse than nothing. I get back being told that I'm making them feel uncomfortable.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Tuesday, January the 30th, 2024. Welcome to the CJN Daily, a podcast of the Canadian Jewish News, sponsored by Metropia. Dr. Nili Kaplan-Myrth is the only Jewish trustee among the 12 members of the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board. She came to prominence long before she was elected, though, during the COVID pandemic. She was an early and fierce advocate for stronger public policies on COVID, including mandatory masking and easier access to vaccinations. She did a lot of tweeting on social media about it, and that spotlight made her a target for plenty of online hate, just because she was a woman as well as being a Jewish one. The hate continued after she took office in November 2022. It colored her very public clash with a couple of other school trustees about wearing masks in schools. The other 2 were not sanctioned, although their behavior did come in for some criticism by the Integrity Commissioner. In the last few weeks, Dr. Nili Kaplan-Myrth's lawyer, Mark Fryman, has gone to court to ask for a judicial review of the school board's sanctions. The whole issue is now back on the school board agenda for tonight, including whether the sanctions are even legal and should be lifted until the courts rule. I reached Dr. Nili Kaplan-Myrth recently to find out how her fight with the school board is going and what it's costing her. And joining us now from Ottawa is Dr. Nili Kaplan-Myrth. Welcome to the CJN Daily again. It's good to see you.
Thank you. You too.
Tell me what you're not allowed and permitted to do in terms of your school trustee activities at the moment.
I mean, right now I'm not allowed to go to just the next board meeting, and I'm not allowed to participate in some committees for 3 months, and that's because I called out anti-Semitism, and I think that's a familiar story for many Jews around the world right now, just in terms of our colleagues and others not understanding what it is when we say that, silence is complicity, or when we say that something that has been said is extremely discriminatory. It's my unfortunate experience that for the last year, I've been the subject of death threats and harassment because I'm a Jew, specifically targeting me as a Jew. And this all predated October 7th, people threatening to kill me and also to gas my family and other things because of the work that I've done as a school board trustee, as well as the work that I've done as a physician. And while all of that was happening, I was turning to my colleagues and saying, you know, hey, I got a threat that if I show up at this school board meeting, I will be shot. And rather than even expressing empathy or concern of any kind, I was met with silence repeatedly, and also with people dismissing the anti-Semitism and saying, if I don't want to be threatened, I should stop speaking.
On social media was the idea. Get off Twitter, get off social media.
Yeah, because the thing is that, like, whether I'm on social media or not, I get the death threats and the harassment via email. Those emails are sent to my trustee account, and they're also sent to my personal account. I get mail to my office. I get phone calls to my office. I've reported more than 25 hate crimes to the Ottawa Police Hate Crimes Unit, and we've charged 2 people for that anti-Semitic hate. But like, even from the moment that I said that I was going to run as a school trustee, there was a study done of the municipal elections in 2022, because I was elected November of 2022. I started as a trustee. And from the time that I said that I was running, I was receiving anti-Semitic threats. People were defacing my signs, delivering anti-Semitic pamphlets to homes that had my election signs. So that's not social media. That's real life. That's people in Ottawa targeting me, and then the people who we've charged with the criminal harassment. That's not social media. That's like phoning my office and saying things that I can't repeat on this podcast that, you know, are really very horrendous, vile things. And they don't live in Ottawa, but they do live in Ontario and British Columbia. So,
right. We were aware that there was a couple of
so,
news stories that we covered in December. Right.
Yeah. And then, I mean, there was also somebody in Montreal. So these are real people, not having to do with anything that I say or do on social media. There was an uptick in anti-Semitic hate directed at me after I put forward the motion to have a Jewish equity coach to deal with the anti-Semitism that families were experiencing in schools. And that motion passed, which was great. But you know, families and also Jewish educators have continued to experience horrible anti-Semitism, and post October 7th, that's a lot worse. And one of the grounds of the complaint against me was that I unmuted myself and said that a person calling me a white woman was being anti-Semitic, which like absolutely was. And that's something that maybe non-Jews don't understand, but she was disqualifying me as a member of an equity-seeking group because of the color of my skin, which she could not have done if I were an Indigenous woman with the same color skin, or any other member of an equity-seeking group with the same color of skin. It wouldn't be about my skin color. It would be about my experience of trauma and discrimination. It's also, you know, one of the accusations against me is that I spoke publicly about information that was shared by the school board to a sort of non-mainstream media organization that has been petitioning to
Rebel Media. Yeah.
The school board had them take down a petition that, because it through change.org, because it specifically it was fueled by hate. It was anti-Semitic, and there was also anti-trans, because I've stood up for trans rights as well. You know, knowing that there are groups that are organized to cause me harm, and then giving those same organizations information about, you know, through an access to information request without warning me, puts me in danger. And it was about my safety plan specifically. And
I need to just slow down for a second, because there's a lot to unpack, and our listeners may not have followed all the details the way we have and the way you have. So let me just take a pause. So they're not happy that it makes them look bad. They're not happy that you are, you know, a thorn in their side. And then there's the code of conduct rules, which they found that you, but not the other two trustees, breached. Bottom line is, are you getting paid or you're not getting paid? Was your salary also part
Oh,
of this?
right. Yeah, I don't know if I'm paid or not. I actually I have no idea. I don't think there was any mention of that, but I don't really care either way. It's not my day job. The process, this whole code of conduct process, has made it look as though I'm a criminal. Like I've literally done nothing at all criminal, in any way. There was an article in the Kingston Whig in which they talked about, I think Oprah Winfrey years ago was actually called out for doing the same thing, for referring to Jews as white and disqualifying the experience of racism and discrimination that Jews experience. So, none of that should be beyond the understanding of my colleagues. I mean, from the perspective of discrimination, from the perspective of the double standard that was undeniably an issue at the when they made their decision about me, but they have sanctioned me for speaking with media, but not the other two trustees who were speaking to media specifically with the intent of causing me harm. Whereas I was speaking to media to say, hey, like this whole process, shouldn't be happening. It's an abuse of the code of conduct process. Like they are just doubling down on this kind of Orwellian model of silencing the person who's discriminated against. And because it's not an actual court, I'm not allowed to speak. I'm not allowed to defend myself. So that's why one of the accusations against me, they find me guilty for unmuting myself on a point of personal privilege to say, I object. That was just anti-Semitic. Sorry, that's not an egregious crime. Like, that's not a reason to remove me from committees. They say, well, this is about her behavior. What behavior? What they're talking about is my speaking publicly about anti-Semitism. And, I think, like, I have seen Jews across Canada and around the world talking about being tone policed in terms of what is anti-Semitism, being tone policed in terms of being told that, oh, we're just using the Jew card or whatever. Like, I'm sorry, but like there is no more straightforward anti-Semitism than that. And I am also Israeli. They know that, my colleagues, but I haven't talked about Israel publicly. Like this is not about post October 7th, my having done anything. And I'm not exaggerating to say I avoid mostly all interactions with my colleagues over the last year have been me quietly arriving moments before a meeting is going to start. I sit down, I participate in the meeting, and I immediately afterwards leave, because it's not safe for me to be there physically when people are saying that they're going to shoot me at meetings. And
right, you had protesters that had to limit the amount. This happened before October 7th. This was a big story for the last few years, the DEI and how Jews were not welcome in DEI circles. And this is nothing new. What do you make of the fact that this fight is still going on? And how is it at all amplified by what's happened since October 7th?
Here's the thing that really shifted for me, and I think this is what's most upsetting, what's heartbreaking, what is just discouraging for me, is that until October 7th, like I define myself as somebody who's progressive. I stand up for social justice. I stand up for gay rights, lesbian rights, trans rights. I stand up for Indigenous rights. I stand up for Black lives. I do all of my work to, like, as a physician and as a trustee, to champion people's rights to be whoever they are, whatever their religion is, their sexuality, their gender identity, their disability. And in doing that, I am the subject of harassment. For like I mentioned, when I stood up for trans rights, I then got emails, phone calls, letters telling me that they're going to kill me because I'm a Jew and because I support trans rights. And because I'm a physician, I also got all the anti-vax and anti-mask stuff. So then what changed on October 7th is that my progressive colleagues saw me as the bad guy. And it doesn't matter that I have stood up for every single other person. When push comes to shove, all of a sudden, the same progressives who wanted support, and where I would absolutely, without a moment's hesitation, stand up and say, yes, equity, diversity, inclusivity, like we need to champion that. The same people will cross the room to vote against me because I'm saying, but hold on a second. When people call me a dirty Jew, that's not okay. It's not surprising. I mean, my Bubi and Zaidi are Holocaust survivors, and they said, like, you never know which of your neighbors is going to turn you in. And, but I grew up in Toronto, and I'm 49 years old, and I have never experienced the kind of anti-Semitism that I've experienced in the last few years, and particularly in the last year. And now, post October 7th, to realize that I don't have any allies is devastating. So I don't regret that I stepped up to be a school trustee. People asked me to do it, and I'm happy to do it for the same reason that I'm a physician. Like, I think it's really important to support public education. I think it's really important to support children. They should all be able to thrive in school. But I do regret that I naively believed that I would be safe as a Jew. And there are lots of trolls and voices out there. Oh, we don't dislike you because you're a Jew. We just dislike you. We don't like your personality. What they don't like about my personality is that I speak confidently. So partly that's also misogynist. But they don't like that I keep, and that I have continued to say, don't you dare attack me as a Jew. I have not fully figured out what that means going forward for me politically. I naively believed that standing up against all racism and all discrimination was the goal. But nobody will stand up for a Jew.
Welcome to the discovery of every other progressive left person that's like, okay, we were wrong, and now we have to move on. Yeah. What work are you able to do for your constituents as a trustee? Is there anything that you can still do, like answer letters, talk to teachers, whatever?
I can actually still be there for my constituents. Like, if they write to me, I'm not barred from interacting with my constituents in any way. But here's the sad reality, is that because of all the threats, like, I assumed that as a trustee, I would hold, coffee hours or something, and I would interact with my constituents, and I would go to schools, and I would do all these things. And because of it's been unsafe to do so, because people have threatened to kill me, I have not been able to do that. But then I've spoken to a member of parliament who said to me that just as a woman, and she's not Jewish, but as a woman, she can't go to her constituency office because of so many threats in terms of her safety. And she also can't walk down the street. So she can work in parliament because she has good security in parliament, but she can't, and like, what does this even mean for politics? Because what good person in their right mind would go into this job? I would not recommend it. And they are pushing out people, and I'm not a career politician. And that's part of why I just say the things that my constituents ask me to say. And I speak really more bluntly than, politicians who are just trying to make allegiances with other politicians or whatever. Like, that's not what I'm there for. I don't plan to run ever again. I'm a physician who stepped up to do this extra sort of civic duty, and it's miserable, and I have seen the pattern of other progressives have been also called out, not just in Ottawa, but across Ontario through code of conduct processes, silenced for speaking. And I mean, to me, that's not okay. My son and I were speaking yesterday about, how do we trust people post October 7th, and how do we feel safe? And I was thinking about, how my grandparents survived the Holocaust, and they left, and the rest, my grandfather's entire family stayed, and they were killed in Poland. And I would have been one of the scrappy people who either would have escaped or would have been organizing some form of resistance. And that's the personality that the OCDSB doesn't like.
So what did you tell him? What did you tell him, your son?
So I said, like, this is where, like, we need to understand, and this is really sad, but we need to understand that what my Bubi and Zaidi said is true. We can't trust. We have to always be making sure that we have an exit plan. That's intergenerational trauma, but it's also the truth. And that's really hard. And it's my experience of this anti-Semitism at the OCDSB being dismissed, disqualified, and then me being punished for speaking is just, it's just kind of like, yeah, it's Orwellian. It's really not surprising. It's kind of what the world is in 2024. And so, I mean, I don't want my son to have to live his entire life worrying about whether his neighbors are going to turn him in. But also, when people that you admire or like or work with or trust suddenly turn around and lash out at you for speaking about anti-Semitism, I mean, it's just a dose of reality. It's like, that is actually the world that we do live in.
How do your kids and your family navigate what's been happening to you?
Yeah. So my husband and my kids have been supportive of me throughout. My husband has had to ferry me back and forth to meetings to be there because I can't be on my own. I no longer walk to work on my own. My two sons are grown up. My daughter is still in high school, but the whole family has felt the stress of this sudden realization that we are seen as dirty Jews by people who weren't allowed to say that before or didn't say it before in the way, like that
Yeah.
feels like this is where society just feels like people think that they can just be so horrible now.
Yeah.
In Ottawa, there was a city councillor who had sexually abused people and he was allowed to continue working.
Right. Shirley. Yeah, we know about that.
So anyway, it feels like everything's upside down. And the reason I've refused to resign is because we shouldn't be able to be pushed out. I have lots of people who do support me and the, thousands of people who voted for me. They wanted me there to be the voice that I've been, but it's a huge burden for me and for my family. And I say, like, I would never do it again. And now, like, how can I as a Jew go back and interact with a group of colleagues who have just said that I am a badly behaved person for calling it anti-Semitism? I didn't embarrass them. They embarrassed themselves.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of the CJN Daily, sponsored by Metropia. Integrity, community, quality, and customer care. If you want to read the Integrity Commissioner's long report, you can. I've put the link to it in our show notes. It did reprimand Kaplan-Myrth, but it also recommended the school board needs to do a better job of protecting her. The report also recommended hiring a mediator to help the trustees learn to work together and deal with their own dysfunction and distrust. By the way, the job of a school trustee pays $16,000 a year. We'll report back on what happens next. Thanks for listening to the CJN Daily.